I'm going to call to order the meeting of the Economic Development Commission for May 3, 2024. Welcome, everyone. I will note that we do have a quorum present, and I would begin by entertaining a motion to approve the minutes, which happen to be the longest minutes I've seen in this committee. Good job. And I'll entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay. Any comments or corrections?
Abstain, I wasn't here for the meeting.
Okay. One abstention. Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. The ayes have it. All right. Next, we'll turn it over to Sean.
Great. Good morning. So I'm sure you're all excited to hear about outdoor dining and the progress that the team is making here. We have 27 applications, and those are all available in OpenGov. So really, any of the applicants can see where they are in their process. We have 10 establishments that have been approved and completed. Would you like the list of those? I can read them.
Sure. Yes.
Why not?
Okay.
So we know where to go.
Row 34, Burger Bar, Moxie, Fezziwigs, Durbar Square, La Coretta, Thirsty Moose Tap Room, The Goods Market on Vaughan Mall, Popovers on the Square, and Litherman's Brewing Company. All approved and complete. There's one, as you'll recall, that was declined by ordinance. That was the goat in the travel lane. We have not had an application from Jumpin' Jays, wouldn't expect one. And I understand there may be two more potential applicants, Massimo's and Ceres Street Bakery. I have a meeting there at 10 o'clock to look at what might be possible under the new ordinance. So any questions about
Questions?
outdoor dining?
I have a question. Did we get any new applicants who weren't license holders last year?
As I scan the list, I would say no. It doesn't appear that way.
Interesting.
I would say the only one technically would be Letterman's.
Oh, Litherman's.
But they were the district for
Right.
the last
Thank you.
8 or 9 years.
Ann?
I just want to throw a comment in. What a nice job Thirsty Moose has done with their platform, making them really, it just looks like expanded sidewalk. And they've brought in new tables and chairs, which are separate tables and chairs, so anyone of any ability can use them. They still have their old picnic tables. I'm not sure what the situation.
Yeah.
It looks like it's still a work in progress
Yeah, I
there.
think they're half and half.
Yeah, it's pretty nice
And one other point, they put up umbrellas
with logos.
with the logos, and we explained to them that it could not, and they changed them
like really quickly.
really quickly. So that is not, I'll leave it at that. So that worked.
On TV.
Yeah.
That worked.
It's that they clearly paid attention to. I mean, they missed the umbrellas, but
Yeah.
not.
It's an easiness.
If I could, Sean, including the depth of the sidewalk was per our request.
That's right.
Yeah, they're
That's
more
right. So-
narrow. I should have commented on that
Yeah.
too. That it looks much nicer when you come down Congress with them with the 8-foot width.
So as we've talked about, this is a transition year, and I will say that most of the applicants did not read the ordinance. So there's been a bit of back and forth, but for the most part, what I'm seeing is our businesses are coming into compliance.
I will say early on, Joe Kelly, not you, the other one, did reach out to me to have me on tap to help him interpret the new ordinance, but he ended up interpreting it on his own. He kind of had me at arm's length and didn't read me. So if he paid attention, maybe you helped him. I don't know.
He doesn't talk to me about it.
Okay.
He doesn't
Looks
talk
good.
to you
Different
about it.
businesses.
Bill, could I,
He was wanting it.
could I just ask what the fee structure ended up ultimately being? I know that was a big point of discussion over the course of our hearings. I'm just curious where the
Can I
fee
defer to
committee
City Councilor?
landed.
I would say that with somewhat heavy debate, the fees committee came out keeping the fees at the same level. there was a lot of debate on council. I know myself said we should go back to pre-COVID pricing based on the sidewalk encumbrance permits, which used to be $10 a square foot. But the council took their kind of recommendation that came out of the fees committee, which was to stay flat.
Got it. Thank you.
And it was all uniform per square footage. There was no extra for setup of the
Correct.
barriers or anything like that.
Correct. From my recollection, when asked, Peter, it was hard for them to define what the actual, yes, it's 5 and 5. When, again, my recollection, when DPW Director Rice was asked to define exactly how much it would cost, it was hard to float an exact number, and so I think some councilors didn't feel, they didn't want to have a kind of arbitrary number to cover that cost. So, but I think, again, as I vocalized for the last few years, we can raise the rate. I also think potentially next year a more uniform size for everyone, a maximum square footage, I think would be nice. But we're also, starting the Market Square refresh, not makeover, refresh. So maybe sidewalk widths will be adjusted, and then we'll see what happens.
Two more questions. Sean, feedback, two questions. Any feedback from the city staff other than public awareness of the ordinance changes based on the process or changes? And then the second question, have there been any concerns with abutters? I think that was one of the items that we had added as well, where an abutter had the ability to come in and weigh in on the permit or not.
No additional feedback from staff. We just meet weekly and go through it, and my observation is staff is working to get to yes while honoring the ordinance, so I've had to go out and explain some things to businesses as the business guy when they want to send me out to settle in. But so there's that. I'm sorry. The second question was
Around any abutter concerns, I think we had added that into the ordinance.
no abutter
as well.
concerns. You've got some historical relationships. You also have you have sharing. You have the folks who are sharing the cost and sharing the platforms, and so that seems to be working well.
Excellent. Thank you.
I want to comment.
Go ahead.
I didn't see it. So it's just a comment suggestion, and it's not for this year. On the return of the application, which is that online, Sean? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is it possible to maybe more than provide just a link to the outdoor dining ordinance, but actually like attach a PDF?
It is.
It's already done?
I'm sorry, yeah. As an applicant, I can tell you, when you go in there is, it is attached as you go through the OpenGov. When you have to upload your insurance certificate, you have to upload any abutter notices, you have to upload your plan, and in that, right above that, are clickable and downloadable links to the ordinance, to the best practices, and layout guide. So all of that is very clearly in the.
No way you can miss it.
There's no way you can miss it, and it's new too. And the way that after this, if anyone wants to see, I can pull up my OpenGov, and you can see what the actual application process looks like in the back and forth. Like an example is the width has needed to be expanded, and so I just uploaded my design from last year, and then DPW got back and said, hey, you need to adjust some things. So now I'll go back, adjust, and re-upload a new layout plan. But I can show anyone in here if anyone would like to see what the actual process looks like on the applicant side. But you can't miss those things.
Okay.
I think people just chose to miss those things.
Gotcha.
Just keep scrolling.
I will say, just in my conversations with restaurateurs, there's definitely some challenges accepting the fact that it's not the same as last year, which we telegraphed as much as we could. But there's the level of acceptance of that is what we're dealing with a little bit.
And so just a minute, so the delay for the remaining 15 or 16 licenses has to do with the city staff trying to get hold of them, or the applicants still haven't figured out what they need to?
a lot of the back and forth is confirming what the space needs are and that the space and clearances meet the ordinance's guidelines. So there's more back and forth on that. Like if somebody sent in their plan from last year,
Yeah.
it required some back and forth, right? And so I haven't heard of there's a couple of restaurateurs who were saying, why is it taking so long? And we kind of went through that. But there's a real push. There's a real push on staff to go through those. It literally comes in to planning, and it goes to inspection, and it goes up to legal, and there's this whole checklist, which you can see on OpenGov where it is in the status in case there's an issue. And then ultimately, planning has to set a fee based on the square footage. And then the applicant pays the fee, and there's your final approval. So there are definitely steps, and it's different. And so, but I haven't heard anybody saying, you're costing me money by holding me up. We haven't heard that. There were a couple of grumblings earlier this week. They are already completed. So,
No one's sitting
you
outside.
know, and the weather matters, right? I mean, if people are missing sunny days, we're going to hear about it.
Right.
So, does that answer your question, Bob?
Just curious, have there been any objections from abutters in any of the cases?
No.
Okay. Just wondered.
And Sean, if the total number that's been approved to date and that are in the works, is it 31? Is that the number, 15 and 16? Is that the number you got?
27 total.
27.
26, one got kicked, the goat got kicked out by ordinance. So
Okay.
26 total, 10 of those 26 are complete and approved.
Okay. And so if all 26 are completed, how does that compare to last year? We around 30?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. We'll be able to do a side-by-side when it's all said and done.
Yeah.
For this
I'm just
group, I
Trying to
guess
think
so.
about who might, and then it would have been the Goat, Jays, and Dwyer's, right? At least those three.
And the Franklin,
Franklin on Fleet.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
just-
so there'll be a few, I think. It doesn't appear that there's new folks other than Lithermans, as we talked about. You really have the usual suspects, if you will.
And then the Raleigh, obviously,
Yeah, Raleigh's close.
couldn't close, couldn't apply, so.
Yeah. And then there's what I'm learning, there's all these, there's things that are set up on private property as well
Yes.
that kind of go through the review process just so that we know what's going on. If you look at Road 34 as an example, and Stroll out there, and there's a few others.
Burger Bar.
Burger Bar, right, anybody on that street. So but they're in that list.
So are they required to get a outdoor dining license, or are they just getting a health inspector pass?
I mean, I'm sure that they have to, they go through the health department to be able to
Right.
have their food outside. Yes,
But they don't have to go through the,
they don't have to pay for a permit.
right.
But they still submit all the same, they have to still submit like a floor plan and all of those things to get approval from like fire and things like that.
So it's really it's the process without the fee.
Yeah.
Because it's private property. Which I think it's good, because then we're aware, fire, police, everyone else is aware of what's being set up.
Other questions? Just as an observation, it just seems like the whole new ordinance hasn't caused applicants to walk away because it's too complicated or anything. They're still going through it, it's just that they aren't as prepared as they thought they were. Is that fair? Okay.
I make one comment, Tom?
Sure.
I'm all about rewarding positive behaviors and rewarding behaviors we want to see. So if you, like I happened to be walking by as Thirsty Moose was, putting up the last of their tables, and I made a point to stop and say, this looks a lot better than it did last year. Thank you for investing in this space, and I think if more people can do that and kind of reward and thank them for the investment that they've had to make, which is significant in some cases, I think that goes a long way to softening any angst out there that might be having to spend more money this year on platforms and things like that. So just a little note to think about that as you walk around town.
Good idea.
Spoken like a young dad.
All right, what's next on your?
Next item is the July 3rd Wednesday meeting that we're having. I've confirmed the school board conference room, which is on this floor. That way, you come into the main entrance, take a right, that's on your right. That's the school board conference room that we're going to use for the Wednesday, July 3rd EDC meeting.
You'll have to remind us of that.
Yeah.
I'm sure I will.
Put up sign.
Look in here, you won't see familiar faces. You'll be like, oh, we're down the hall.
We'll go home.
Make sure you send it to Ben, too.
Oh, no, that's
We don't want to feel like he's being left out.
coming too.
Okay.
The December meeting is confirmed at the high school with the CTE
6.
group, including breakfast. You might want to get that on your calendar.
We won't forget that.
It's our normal meet, it's the first Friday. Just we were trying to confirm a date to be there so that we didn't miss that opportunity.
And that one will be at 7:30? Because sometimes in the
I'll
past,
confirm,
they've
yeah.
asked
Sometimes
us to
that schedule doesn't work for the students, so I would keep in your mind an 8 a.m. start, because that's traditionally what's happened the last couple of years because of the student schedule.
Right. Okay.
We'll make a note to follow up on that, Tom. Thank you.
It would be December 6th.
Thank you. 12/6. We had, the city had a meeting with Standard & Poor for the bond meeting. We do that every year to present our financials, to request our bond rating. I've been a member of that, a part of that for a couple of years. It went very well. They're always impressed with our level of specificity, and one of the comments they made was there was some municipalities can't even tell them where they're going to end the year. We kind of had it out a couple of decimal points. So that's just how we operate here. You know, that's why we get good bond ratings and why we get awards every year. But I'll just share with this group, you all know this, but what I shared from a local economy, they asked what is different, and I just updated the fact that our unemployment rate continues to tick down. We're at 2%, the latest figures that I've used. I talked about Novacure being ready to be open for business downtown and inviting people from around the globe to come and visit, share their research and their products, as well as Portsmouth with them. I talked about the Vertex and Lonza partnership. That building is being built out at Pease, but the point there was just that we're able to attract, you know, that high level of I guess, manufacturing and medical research. And that's going to create 300 jobs, but it won't be until 2025. But we're just trying to paint this picture as we're still attracting, you know, lots of different businesses. Talked about the Liberty Mutual Insurance consolidation, where they got out of 2 buildings in Dover and came here to Portsmouth. I mean, that matters. That parking lot is full these days. I reinforced the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard's economic impact, $1.45 billion. That was for year 2022. They're a year behind in there. But also to paint the picture that this kind of economic impact is ongoing from the shipyard, and we don't see a fall off in that. And last, I shared the Americas for the Arts study, where the Greater Portsmouth area tallied $70.2 million in economic impact, which is up 20% from the 2017 AFTA study. So really just, in my mind, trying to continue to paint the picture of we're not going backwards, we're not losing ground, we continue to be attractive, we continue to grow, and so that was shared. The other point for this group, Peter Britch shared that in the last 2 years we've added 400 residential units and 500,000 square feet of commercial space. So, and I know we talk about this, but we are available, we are open to development, and we have developers developing in Portsmouth, and we all know that doesn't count all these projects that we've talked about, the 19 that are approved, that are working this year. So again, we're explaining that, you know, when you look out from, we've had these great reports to Standard & Poor, and we continue to be attractive. Yes, Councilor.
Yeah, it's also the port has been more active too.
Yes, it has.
So, you know, just another piece of that.
Yeah, I didn't talk about that, but yes.
Okay, anything else, Sean?
So Tom, you asked me to look into the zoning changes for EV chargers.
Well, yeah, what the status of those?
Well, I will say this. It passed first reading. There was a lot of conversation, friendly amendments, et cetera. So what I would say to this group is, it is on the city council agenda for Monday, for the 6th, for the second reading. So that would be, if you really want to know from the original source, I would encourage you to check that out. If you want to go back to the meeting, the last city council meeting, there was a 35-minute segment. It started at 53 minutes and 30 seconds, and it went to an hour and 28 minutes. So there's a 35-minute segment with a lot of conversation clarifying different things that I just didn't transcribe, but I would encourage you to look at that. And if you want to go on the 6th, that should bring you up to speed.
I will say, if some of you remembered that when we redid Bridge Street, we buried the systems for EV chargers. Those chargers have finally shipped. They're on a boat or something our way. A year and a half later, so once those get here, we're closing in on the installation of EV chargers in the Bridge Street lot.
It's at the lower side.
The lower side, yep. So when they redid the law, there was funding to put in the necessary work for those chargers. They've just been not made yet. But we have gotten notification that those are made and are shipping our way. So hopefully, I don't know how long cargo ships take. I would assume by end of construction
As
season.
if they go through the Panama Canal
Yeah,
or
we'll
not.
say by the end of construction season, hopefully.
Assistant Mayor, are they Tesla chargers or are they the universal
They're
chargers?
I believe the universal chargers.
Yeah, I think they were ordered before Tesla opened up.
They were. Yeah.
Hopefully they're not stuck in Baltimore.
Oh yeah. No. I think my understanding is they just got on a transport.
So just to follow up on Sean's comment on the ordinance, I did listen to that 35-minute segment the night you had it, and by the end of it, I was confused as to all the different amendments that were proposed.
Same. And I sit next to Kelly. Not that I can
Is there a new draft available to look at, or are you still waiting on that?
in the packet.
It'll be a packet.
It will be in the packet.
Okay.
Anything redlined will be in the packet for the second reading on Monday.
That's online now.
But because it passed the first reading, it didn't change to the point where it had to go back for a new first reading, correct?
Correct.
So
Correct.
it is going to second reading.
There were no major.
Material change.
Yeah, I think it was the big thing was taking away whether it counted any supporting equipment counted towards the parking and things like that.
Right. Right.
But it's funny when you say it was 35 minutes because it's like when you're up there, time is not real.
Seems like hours, right? Right. Anything else?
I just have a high-level note on offshore wind if you want to
Absolutely.
have a visual aid. So if you're following the articles about offshore wind, it has been identified where the federal government, where BOEM, Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, will sell leases. We'll put the leases to auction, which I think is very, very soon. But now you can see them. Oh. And I put stars in there. Those are my very, very high-tech skills. The northern star there is Searsport in Maine, where the state of Maine is going to create an offshore support facility. They already own it. They already have a rough port. They're going to invest in it. So that's their big bet. And the star to the south between Boston and Gloucester is Salem, Massachusetts. And at last I heard, there was a private company, Crowley Energy Services, going to build a brand new port there to support offshore wind, not only in the Gulf of Maine, but Vineyard Wind and others. So we're obviously right in the middle. I don't think we're building any new ports, But the question is, to your point, Tom, what is our opportunity?
Right.
And so more research needs to be done. I used to sit on the Commission for Offshore Wind and Port Development. All that effort is now moved into the new New Hampshire State Department of Energy, and I just think it's a matter of anyone's ability to do some research. I'm always kind of keeping an eye on it just because it's important, but I'll say what I've said for a while. We're not going to be the main port for the big cargo. I believe our opportunity is in New Hampshire manufacturers supporting component parts and other things in construction and maintenance of the eventual turbines, which could be 5 to 10 years out. But you need to start building them, and then you're going to need to maintain them, and then our location could lend itself to various support vessels, supply vessels, et cetera. So that is definitely our opportunity long term.
Questions about that? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good report.
Great. All set.
Okay, let's go to our working groups. We'll start with economic resilience. Ann?
Nothing new this month. Our next meeting is next Thursday with Jim Jalbert, we all know as the owner of C&J Bus Company. What I didn't know is he's also the chair of the New Hampshire Transportation Commission, and in that capacity works nationally in Washington, D.C., looking for best practices nationally for public transportation. So he's a bigger fish than I even realized in public transportation. So that is next Thursday morning, 11 o'clock via Zoom. There's a little bit of invite confusion. I sent an invite to hold that date and time, but Karen has now followed up with a City Hall Zoom link. So delete mine, log on to hers. And we'll report next month on what Jim has to say.
Good. And so this is focused on the microtransit,
Yes.
transit
Yes.
alternatives.
He, just in my phone call to him, I think he could have stayed on the phone for 2 hours. He has so many ideas for things that could be happening in public transport. So he really wasn't in the C&J mindset at all. He was very much in the whole state of New Hampshire, Portsmouth in particular. Here's all these things that he's seen for years, and it's going to be an interesting call.
And he's also in the American Bus Association Board. So
Okay.
he has a national
Yeah,
view.
he is a big presence in
He
public
is.
transportation. So he's going to be a great one to tap into for information.
It's probably worth commenting on the communications we've had with is it Jim or John Lyons of the Sustainability Committee?
Oh, Bill?
Bill Lyons, that's right.
Bill
Yeah.
Lyons. We connected at the Market Square.
Right. And then he
Public
sent
meeting.
some materials around.
Yes, he's got all sorts of information on public transport as well. He's out of town for the next few weeks.
Right.
And I'm just going to meet him one-on-one and see, I think it's like May 16th or something, see what he brings to the table and see if we should be plugging him into a working group.
Yeah.
Talk to him.
My impression is that there are other players in this field right now, other city players, including the Sustainability Committee. And I got a call from Councilor Tabor yesterday wanting to know, he had heard that we were looking at transit, and he says the Housing Committee is trying to address transit as well. So at some point, if we're pursuing this, we need to get
It's all so interconnected.
connected in some way. But I think we're on the right track, so.
I would be curious, and I'm sure this will come up in your conversation around public-private partnerships, both regionally and nationally. Any insight that you can glean on how successful that is as opposed to fully public-funded microtransit or transportation
I
infrastructure?
think there's a
would be-
lot of that in other communities.
Yeah, I think there's a real opportunity for us for that here.
Well, I mean, we're seeing it with C&J partnered with Chinbro, transporting workers to the shipyard. That is brand new as of February, I think. So that's kind of that, I mean, in a different sphere, but sort of that thing.
I think we might be getting close to wanting to open a file in our library for transit and start, like the two reports.
Yeah, I think
we've
this
seen.
transit conversation is going to go on for a while.
Yeah. So I read the two reports that he had sent us, and, they were pretty in-depth on
a
things
lot.
that they were proposing. But, okay. Any other subjects?
Nope.
All right. Our new chair of the Business Support Group, you want to report out?
Sure. So we had a couple of meetings since our last BDC meeting, and this is Anna, Bob, Sean, and then help from our chair and vice chair as well. And so the Business Support Committee's two agenda items are taking a deeper dive into the CRM that Sean and the city are using for connections to our businesses, and then also addressing a concern that came up kind of hot and heavy at the beginning of the committee's birth on city inspections and issues raised with that, and are there issues, and diving into that. So both of those meetings were good. The first was a demonstration of the Grow Lab software by Anthony Comito, which was a really good idea, and it was also eye-opening too. CRMs are complex, and a lot of it was Q&A, which was appropriate because it probably looking at a dashboard on a CRM is not nearly as informative as digging in with how can this help us, kind of bigger issue questions. Fortunately, we were able to, a couple weeks later, get into a discussion about the demo, and then which was also useful. And then we spent a little bit of time at the end about the Shanti Wolf letter, which was dated back in February, but it's it's for all purposes recent. It does have some statistics that may have been updated since then. It's a really comprehensive letter about then and now on mostly the building inspection process, which is all online, and permits pulled and permits awarded, and it was really good. We hope to share that with this whole committee, or the commission rather, soon. We've all talked about bringing Shanti in for a presentation, like a 15-minute presentation of this letter. The good thing from my perspective is he has already thought about it. He's already put together this wonderful outline. I think it's just all of us agree it's ready to go to Broadway here, and have him come to the group. I am aware that we've got a jam-packed 2024, so we're targeting right now maybe June and July. Let's see what else. And we'll circulate the February letter prior to, when it's appropriate, prior to that meeting. So that's the report out.
Okay. I happen to have the letter in front of me, and the most amazing statistics on it is in fiscal year 23, the inspection office completed 11,450 inspections.
What?
Yeah.
It's a busy office, and by way of comparison, in fiscal year 20, that number was 6,292. So Portsmouth is a busy place, but the real import of this seems to be that office is caught up and has alleviated all the concerns people had about slowdown in the construction industry because of inability to get a sign off on one permit or another. But you were going to say something?
Yeah, I'd like to just add a little bit more to the conversation. And one is that as I continue to learn here what goes on the third floor, a lot of the time is before it gets to inspection. It's going through the planning process and the approvals and the planning board. Once it gets to inspection and it's improved, then it really just becomes inspecting and approving the work. But there's a lot that happens before that. So just to broaden the lens on when, what is holding up a developer, well, there's a lot that happens through planning and approvals before it gets to inspection. Once it's there, then everyone agrees, this is what we're going to do. And then inspection goes out and does the last piece. Now, could there be delays and hiccups? Certainly. But just to put that in perspective for this group, that's number one. Number two, there's definitely a demarcation between pre-Shanti and post-Shanti, and a lot of it has to do with just his leadership. And it also has to do with the fact that they've added staff. So he has made the case to say, we need to add staff, which is a cost, to serve the city better, right? So I'm not that I'm defending him. He's quite capable of doing that. The last thing I'll just say is, if he were to come and speak to the commission, I think it would be helpful. It would also give all the commissioners an opportunity to ask questions, and my hope would be that everyone walks out of the room much more informed and even able to speak to what we do, not just like it's better. That's great, but I would love for this group to be able to help others outside of the EDC understand and be satisfied, not satisfied, be happy with how we're doing things and the investment we make in our city in the area of development. So that's an opportunity, and I just wanted to make sure I put that on the table. Thank you.
I forgot to add one thing from my report out. We had the idea of kind of getting tales from the field from general contractors and builders that we know. I contacted 3 general contractors that I was positive do a fair amount of work within the city. Bob's also is doing the same, so we'll have 5 or 6 at the end of that. The 3 that I contacted are working on multiple city projects. They're mostly small, sometimes they're medium size, and they're not having any issues with the online process or getting the electrical inspector or getting the plumbing inspector or getting the final inspection done on their job. Now, the caveat I'll put in there is these guys are pros. They're not the first time. They're not raising their hand or calling Sean, saying, I've never done this before. They've got staff, usually. One of them didn't, I guess. But they all had positive feedback and said the same thing. There was a pre-Shanti area and a post-Shanti area. So I got 3 out of 3 positive feedback on that Tales from the Field kind of effort.
Interesting.
Vince?
Yeah, I've dealt with smaller contractors, and they still, I think there's still a perception that Portsmouth is difficult. And I know that people who have big projects know the system and are used to it. But I think the smaller contractors still feel like, oh, I don't want to work in Portsmouth because the whole process is daunting. So I don't know how you change that perception other than getting them to do the work and going through the process. But
Well, I think, Sean summarizes it well when he says there's the process to get a building permit issued,
Right.
and then there's process to build out the thing. And the inspection department is on the second half of that. And, I think it's a fair observation that Portsmouth has a very complicated zoning ordinance compared to most communities its size. I think that's one of the reasons that the big players who have experience in complicating projects are able to handle that, and the smaller ones just find the process overwhelming. And I'm not sure what you can do about that process, because it's really the substance of the ordinances that it takes a big effort to understand and fit with them. Joanna?
I was going to say, I think it's also important to remember when you were comparing the 2020 to 2022 or 23, is the individual home improvement projects. You know, the individual people who are not big contractors, or you know, we're redoing our basement steps. We have to pull a permit for that. You know what I mean? And so I think that's really important too. But I will say, just from an outside perspective, if so just had to deal with the building department now versus then, it definitely is a much more cohesive team. They're really good about scheduling, like, you know, multiple inspectors to get things done instead of before. I think the process was a lot of, which actually is why I got involved in city government. I kind of understand the inspections department. There was a lot of, you know, plumbing would come this day, 4 days later maybe electrical, 3 days later maybe HVAC and mechanical, and so I think they're really concise. And I think, as Sean said, it's really under Shanti's leadership, and she's very happy, I know, to meet with anyone and to talk about the changes. And I think it'd be great to have him come in and do a presentation.
But by far, those 11,000 permits are those projects.
Yeah. And which I think sometimes are harder when people are doing.
Absolutely.
Or people that don't realize, you know, if your bathroom reno's over a certain threshold, you have to pull a permit, or if you're changing X, Y, and Z. So I think they've done really good at being out there in the scene and walking through. I will say, I think the department, including health, has really done a great job of get to yes. So figure out how we help somebody accomplish a task.
So why don't you see if you can work something out with Shanti to
Okay.
come in, and then within the next couple meetings, I think we want to avoid August because
Right.
the PDA is going to do their report out.
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions on that? Okay. And anything else from your group?
No, we do have a May meeting scheduled. Yeah, we were lucky enough to be able to meet a couple times since the last EDC.
Okay. Great. Okay. Ben, would you like to give us your chamber report?
Just a few updates. You know, as I've shared in the past, and it's in our name and brand, we are all about collaboration, bringing our business community together. So just wanted to highlight a few of those and where they're at. So the newest collaboration to us is Art Round Town. I think many of you know that's an effort from our art galleries for a long time to host the first Friday of each month as a gallery opening in each of their locations and collaboratively work on that. Like all of us can probably relate to, you know, you're busy on your own shop and your own life, and these opportunities for collaboration sometimes get lost in the shuffle. So we have stepped up to facilitate that process for them and built a new website and created new literature for them and maps of these shops. So that happens to be tonight, coincidentally. So please get out there this evening if you can and visit a gallery or two. They often have a glass of wine waiting for you there, and an artist, and all sorts of fun stuff. So I would highlight that. Also, we are starting to work on vintage Christmas programming with our partners in that effort. Restaurant Week just wrapped up. Another opportunity of collaboration from our restaurant community so far. The initial reports, kind of anecdotal data, is that it was very positive. We compare the 10 days prior to the 10 days of to the 10 days post. So we have to wait for that 10-day window. And so in about 2 weeks here, we'll get some data back from our restaurants as to how that went. So we can report back on that data at a later time. Another new effort that's underway is still a work in progress, is our local sort of marine-based, maritime-based nonprofits, Seacoast Science Center, Sail Portsmouth, the Gundalo, Albacore, the list goes on and on and on, are interested in doing some collaborative marketing and branding work to identify Portsmouth as a place to come to learn about the water, be part of the water, and experience some water-based education and activities. So we've been meeting with them for a few months now, and there's we made a mission statement. We have a little name. Next is to focus on how we can partner with them and market that group of nonprofits together. So more to come on that, but that's an exciting partnership that's in the works. We also will be probably this fall launching a local gift card program, sort of a replacement of the once a la carte card that people may remember. We're going through some software demos right now and looking at what's the best product out there. And we'll be, I think we're pretty close on that process and probably have a final meeting later today. We are still doing some public policy advocacy work. There are some important bills right now in the legislature, some good, some bad, that will impact the business community. One that is particularly alarming would increase the amount that you could sue for damages and double that amount, and that could be particularly harmful to a lot of industry if that were to change. So that's something that we're keeping an eye on. Also, maybe on a little bit more fun side of things, besides legislative stuff, next week is Hit the Decks, sort of the unofficial kickoff to the summer, so that's next Thursday. We'd like the forecast to change, so if anyone can work on that for us, that would be great. But it's just a sign that the season, tourism, hospitality season is kicking off. We have our kiosks that we staff for the city downtown in Market Square will reopen on May 15th. We always open that the week prior to UNH's graduation, because we do see a lot of people visiting Portsmouth that weekend for the graduation weekend. So you started to see some of our seasonal businesses reopened. I think Ferry Landing opened yesterday, another good sign of the season starting up. And so we're excited to see all our historic houses and businesses come back to life. My last thing I'll share is the Street Life 2024. If you remember Street Life from the little lobster dinner we had last year, will be announced next week. A little preview. We'll be out at the Peace Trade Port this year to highlight the success and the impact that has had on our community and the region. So look for that announcement next week. We're filming a little video today. I'm sure it's going to be super awkward. So more to come on that. But
You need me to strap through, just let me.
thanks.
Great. What's the new name for the Maritime nonprofit group? Is it
It's
still secret?
hang on. We went through many revisions of it, and I want to make sure I get the right. I'll have to send it to you. I don't remember it off the top of my head. It's longer than.
And do they have a website set up as well, or?
Not yet. No, we're just now at the point where we're figuring out what that group wants to do and wants to be, and then we'll have to have a discussion about who really wants to be involved. There's a lot of entities around that table, some of which are very much hospitality and tourism driven entities, and others are not really. You know, like the local youth sailing organization. There's some different entities in the room, so we'll just see who wants to continue that effort and put together a plan for them once we know who we're working with.
You have a question?
Nope.
Oh,
I do.
You look like you.
Yeah, I was.
Joanna?
Ben, are we thinking the Christmas market is going to be the same, like, layout type environment within, like, the hearth? Or are we looking to try to expand more into Pleasant Street after? Are we still thinking after parade?
Yeah, so the shop and stroll, the effort after the holiday parade, we haven't really started to focus on that just yet, outside of some preliminary conversations that the folks that organized the parade for the city felt positive about that event taking place, and there's the opportunity to revisit that and work with them again this year. So we're excited about that. I think what you're referencing is the Hearth Market had the courtyard space activated. That was an effort by them, and certainly other private entities could follow suit and do something like that. As far as the chamber or the city organizing a larger sort of block party, that's something we could discuss. We just haven't gotten there yet, so we'll discuss that.
Last year, the big role of the city was to just keep the streets closed longer.
Yeah.
And then what could happen could happen. So if there's room to evolve into other things or more private entities want to get involved, that's an opportunity.
Great. Other questions of Ben? Thank you. Everett, tell us about Market Square.
Yeah, great. So it was really the first meeting for kind of the Market Square refresh. I was late to the meeting, so I'll defer to Ann at some point here. But it was really, my impression was it was really, Peter Stitt ran it, and it was as much less about a presentation and probably, at least my opinion, and more about what did the committee members want to see in this refresh? What would that look like? And does it more parking spots or less parking spots? Is it wider sidewalks in certain places? Is it, there was some discussion amongst some folks who are stakeholders, merchants, about having two-way traffic on some streets in downtown, specifically maybe State Street. I didn't hear, it might have been before I got there, about, was there discussion about closing Market Street? So, you know, it's very preliminary. There's another there's a series of meetings, maybe 4 or 5, that are going to take place before the report's finished. I don't know, I guess I would defer to Ann. Do you have other comments or thoughts?
Well, there was the working group meeting, and then there was the public meeting. And I can't, were you at the public meeting?
No. Tom?
So that, you were at the public meeting. I mean, my notes are kind of a jumble, of the whole thing. But I did write down Beta Group's, that's the design firm, their opening statement is really important. We're looking for refinements rather than huge transformations. And that's what's been really misunderstood by all the chatter on social media. Because even at that meeting, you know, somebody stood up and said, so it's a done deal, we're closing all the streets.
Right.
And they couldn't get her to not understand that
Right.
the done deal is that we've hired a planning firm to give us some thoughts of what might happen. That's the done deal.
Yeah.
They've been hired, they're going to give us input. But then there was, and this is kind of from both meetings, what I wrote down as things people threw out on the table, other than closing streets. People asked for street amenities, lighting, looking at pavement widths, sidewalk crossings, pedestrian crossings, street trees, outdoor dining, how we manage deliveries, parking, crossing signal timings, grade transitions, and a lot more. It was very interactive.
Comfort
The public-
station.
Public meeting was very, very interactive. They passed a mic around. Pretty much everybody in the room got as much time as they wanted
Yeah.
to talk. There was a lot of talk.
So to build on your point, and this is a planning process.
It's just a process.
They have been hired to help us plan, and I will tell you, because I'm on the smaller group, which then goes to the working group, which then goes to the public, most of the conversation is about public input. I mean, this is what we've brought them in addition to their expertise in landscaping and streetscaping and engineering. They've got
were very
dedicated
good. It was
resources
really-
to public input.
It was very interesting at the public meeting. All the, you know, I want to almost call it like fun and games. When we came in, there were like these boards, and you got to put stickers, and you got to put coins in jars and vote, and it was,
Yeah.
it kept you really engaged with all these interesting ways that you could give your input ahead of time.
And in addition to me being on there to support our efforts, Monty is also on there from a community engagement standpoint. So the city, you know, we're making sure that it's a conversation, and it's giving people as much opportunity as they can to give input to this firm that we've hired to gather all that and look at and use their expertise and come back with a plan. It is a planning effort.
It was interesting how many people at the public meeting got the microphone to say that what they don't like is that you're not giving us a chance to tell you what we want. But yet, at that moment, they had the microphone in their hand with an opportunity. You're not giving us an opportunity to give input. You're not listening to us. But yet, that was
Yeah.
why that meeting was happening. It was amusing how many people focused on it.
So here's another opportunity for the EDC to spread that message. If you hear things or there are questions or the words Market Square come up, right? It's an educational opportunity. You all know you've got a representative, and is there as a citizen, I'm on it. I mean, right. Just to make it, so
I believe they'll be at Market Square Day.
Yep,
Is
there'll
their
be a
next
booth.
public interaction.
Yep.
They'll have a booth at Market Square
Yep.
Day. Talk to them.
I also think it's an important time, and we started doing this when we were talking about Prescott Park, to remind people what Market Square was, and also how much pushback in the 70s when Market Square was redone for the first time, how much pushback was received within that. And so, the conversation, much like with Prescott Park, not wiping something out, but making sure that it can transition with the community for the next 50 to 100 years, and making sure it's a sustainable segment of our town. We're never going to change the core, value of Market Square as a gathering place. But it's, are there improvements for the day-to-day use of residents? I think what's really important of this group is that we're not really going out and asking, outside tourists what they want to see in Market Square. We're saying, what do we as residents want to see in Market Square? And so that's very important. But I would agree with you. I think the article in the paper with the headline was really, unfortunately, detrimental to this cause, because it is refinement. And that dates back to starting conversations in 2017 about what are we going to do with, Market Square. And I'll be the first one to say that 7 years ago, if you asked me, I would have told you to shut down every single street. I no longer feel that way, because through communication and conversations with other people. But I think, again, if this group, like what Sean said, if this group can really go out to their communities and say, please be involved within this.
Yeah.
Vince?
I would just reiterate that the process that they used in that meeting was a kind of a multi-dimensional way of gathering information. And
Cool.
it was very cool. It was, and yet people still, as Ann says, when are we going to be able to, give our input, and it's like, it was kind of nuts.
It's also important to remember that there are certain streets that are state streets, state roads. Congress connects to a state road, which means that things that change have to go through multiple layers of, there's conversation about State Street. Well, that, takes in a conversation with the state and the bridge and all of that stuff. And so.
Well, just a comment
Street's
on
not
that. I thought the best comment of the entire night was near the end when Sue Sterry said, we all know Market Square feels like Market Square. I don't really care what you're going to do or not do, as long as it feels like Market Square when it's done. And
That's true.
that should be almost a theme. But I don't know if this is part of the feedback process, but when we did the master planning for Prescott Park back in 2016, we had a dedicated public feedback email set up. So it wasn't the regular city one. It was dedicated just to Prescott Park, and people could go on there anytime they want. And it seemed like every time there was an article in the paper, there'd be a rush of it. But it turned out that was real helpful, and it went directly to the consultants as well. It was real
I know there's
helpful.
a web page for Market Square.
Yeah, there was a full web page. Every time
think
there was a
there's a link
report,
to that.
everything was there. I think it's still up if you do a search on the city site.
Oh, yeah. It's
But I think the idea of
dedicated.
allowing people to give their input without having to show up at city meetings or to get on a Zoom at 7:30 at night might be a way of getting more feedback.
There's a link for Peter on there, but I know we have something like that for the housing committee. So I mean, if the beta, once the working group gets together with Beta, if they think, yeah, and then the survey's on there.
Yeah.
I'll just add while we're wrapping this, that Beta also came and spoke to the chamber board, and they're interested in getting feedback from businesses as well, right? Because business is a different constituent than residents per se. So they're interested in talking to anybody and everybody, and it's certainly helpful if there's a meeting to have them come in, and they're more than happy to do that. And I think that went well, Ben, the board.
It did, yeah. It really clarified the project and the scope of it for our board. And
Yeah,
that was
which is a
very well
great,
received.
very diverse board, engaged board.
And in that vein, Tom and I were talking about, this is maybe 3-4 years ago when the initial discussion about what are we going to do about Fleet Street, expand sidewalks one side or the other, eliminate parking, and there were those
QR
posters up
codes.
and with the QR code, you'd scan it and you put in your information, and so hopefully that also is incorporated in discussion going forward as one more way to get public input.
Absolutely.
Definitely, because Monty's on it. Monty's all about the QR code.
Yeah,
That
well,
was interesting.
and that's, I mean, you could use as an opportunity for every single choice that has to be made to get feedback on a regular basis. I think, I thought that Fleet Street thing was really great.
Feel free to have people, I think that the survey numbers, I always think it's, I feel like laughable is the wrong word, but I always find it a very interesting statistic when we look at how many people actually fill out the surveys, or like we got flash vote started, and we feel it's a success of 600 people have registered for it based on we know the number of people that entered. But yeah, it's when you think about that there are 10,000 households, or 8,500 households. So really getting people to actually fill out the data, because I had this conversation with a local property owner the other day down near me, and I said, we can kind of only go off the information that we get. So if only 250 people fill out the survey and all 250 of those people want one certain item, well, then we have to assume that is the majority view. The other 17,000 people or 10,000 people that didn't fill out the survey or didn't take time to participate, we asked for your input and you didn't give it, so we have to go off the information that we do receive. So I definitely think, to your point, is getting it out there as much as we can to get feedback.
Anything else, Everett?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Any other questions of Everett? Okay. All right. Vince and Joanna.
Yes.
I'm going
You want me-
to, I
yep.
missed the meeting. I was actually in St. Lucia when the meeting was, so I missed it.
Look at you.
Weren't you dancing with a dog or something?
No, that happened right before that, yeah.
Okay. I'll just go through. We had a small working group regarding the South Meeting House. As I'm sure most people on this commission know, that the South Meeting House is vacant right now. And there are, some people didn't know, but the South Meeting House is vacant. PPTV left. So now there has been a lot of conversation. The VFW looked to potentially put something in. They were the first group that came forward, not a bar. And then some local residents came forward. And so now we have an we're going through an RFP process, I believe. I can't remember if it's RFQ or RFP. I believe it's RFP, looking for submissions. The big conversation that is around is that if you live in the South End, you know that parking is tight, and there are 17 spots there that technically go with the building, but PPMTV, who has been the primary tenant for the last almost decade, I believe, has never needed all 17. So they have kind of been unofficially inherited a little bit by the residents, even though they belong with that space. So there's a lot of concern within the neighborhood of obviously what could potentially go into that building, but also making sure whatever goes in there, there's a conversation about parking. Actually, a group of residents came forward and said that they could collab around $1 million of their own money to rehab and figure out something with that building. And so we are, the RFP process is going to be starting with that. On the same time, the Blue Ribbon Housing Committee sent a recommendation for the council as far as Sherburne School, which is to start the land lease and disposition of Sherburne School for permanently below market rate housing. There has been some concern about the softball field. It is confirmed that we will be building a new softball field with the new fields at Community Campus. So we will when that parcel is developed, we will have ready to go a replacement softball field. I know that it's been a big push of concern. We are starting the RFQ process for that, which is a request for qualifications from developers, not proposals. So we will have an update on that from the city manager on Monday. And then we'll work within the timeline of any RSAs that require it to be open for so long for profit or nonprofit developers who are looking to build, again, permanently below market rate housing. We use that term because it kind of encompasses all levels. We've been talking a lot about workforce, but there is the conversation that, there are people that live below workforce. And so figuring out kind of what is the best use. In that RFQ, we also said for community-based development. So leaving it open that if somebody said, hey, we have the funds, we want to take the school and make it a child care center, or we want to make it something that is a community-based enhancement, they can also submit for an RFQ. We went through the EV ordinance. We recognized, this is a little personal, we recognized my FBLA kids, which again, if anyone wants to come in and speak, we have a few more weeks left and then we can sign up. I know we've been a little crazy. The high school business club competed in FBLA for the first time in a decade, and they learned a sweet lesson that when I say business attire, it does not mean business casual attire. They were almost not allowed to compete, but they were allowed to compete, but they were told that if they won, they could not essentially go to nationals because you have protocol. You have to wear a suit jacket. You have to wear a tie. That being said, 2 of our kids placed first and second, but we're not, allowed their awards because there's rules. But so we were able to bring that whole group up to honor them. We had our normal public comment. The zoning. As some of you have been aware from land use, there were some zoning changes moving from GB1 and 2 to Gateway. Those worked for about a year through planning board and then landed at the city council with some changes. So those were read through. I feel like that's kind of, we will be having a work session on the police community facility. As some of you know, the original budget was 38-ish million. Then the plans that we saw the first couple rounds were leaning in the 65 to 70 million, and the council was very adamant that they need to come down within the original proposed budget, if not less. And so we will be having a work session with that. And I think that's it. Is there any questions? Yes.
The only thing I would ask is the rezoning of the properties around the credit union on
Yes.
Route 1, and I think there was a conversation with the state around transportation. Would any plans for housing there result in more traffic on West Road or more traffic out onto Route 1?
I think under Route 1, so I can give this update too. I'm in the public advisory group for the Route 1 project. And so we're working very closely with Coast on that. And when Service Credit Union in the next few weeks, we'll be holding a charrette about what could go back there. And so that will be a public. I'm sure that we will make sure it's in the newspaper too. And then I know that there's been conversations about the Episcopal Church with PHA and Coast to make sure that there's housing at that development site also. But yes, we will be making.
There were concerns with traffic with, I think, the 8 unit on the corner of Hoover and Route 1, so I would
Yes.
be certain that there will be concerns with additional housing, so I think
Yeah.
West Road is an opportunity to ease some of those concerns.
Yeah, so one of the,
Just to clarify, Service Credit Union, it's the giant building way out Lafayette Road near Jetto's.
yes.
Yes,
It's the land behind that.
but I think anything going out onto Route 1 in that area is challenging to navigate.
So, I was just going to say, so the state is redoing Route 1. We will not see those. We will have another public session that's going out in the community, I believe, this summer. But the plan has shown there's a couple different ideas of alleviate some of those. They're rating some of the intersections. In 3 years, Ocean Road is going to be an F. It's failing that intersection. But we're looking at getting sidewalks completely from Ocean Road to West Road in this project that they're looking at, will be done in 2028, potentially adding a little, and I hate to even say this word sometimes, roundabout, little circle. If you look at, they're looking at based on the one in Newington heading to Dover, kind of like that flow, potentially in the Walmart area, based on some of their models to get rid of some of that backup traffic that happens. There's also been the very loose conversation over the years, but I think more pressing with water countries, potentially looking at changing their entrance exit. But part of that is going to be that there are, I think, something like 40 plus properties that would be impacted on easements or land based on sidewalk widths, because we're looking at 10 feet on both sides to include a multi-use path. And so you were at that meeting too.
Yeah.
And so, but working very closely with coasts. And so some of the conversations really West Road, if you look at kind of where that, there are certain areas that are going to be more impacted, as in there's not enough room to widen based on, so, we assume that there'll be some state purchasing of properties to make this project complete. But I can make sure that when the public groups start conversations happening, that this group knows. But it looks like it's going to be a really great project that is going to connect finally. As someone who's over on Maple Haven, it's scary to even walk to Jiddos.
Is there a dedicated website where we can go and look at the plans?
No. Yeah.
I don't believe so yet.
It's not finalized.
Yeah, so I would imagine, as Assistant Mayor said, this summer they're going to be going into the public input phase, and I know they will put together a website at that time, so all these preliminary plans and drawings and things like that are available to the public. But it is, I will say, it's quite impressive. Like a sidewalk's not, it's more of a path. It's much nicer than really most places in town of what they're envisioning there. And I think it's going to really help the multimodal transportation. And a lot of the conversations has been about how do we improve the artery so that the side roads don't become the artery, and all these little cut throughs that we all know and use, no longer become needed because the main travel path is flowing well enough that we, feel like that's the fastest route. So that's been the main kind of goal there.
And I will say that we are making sure that SABRE, which is Seacoast Area Bike Riders Association, has a representative in there. So we're making sure that we are, and then obviously we have our own traffic engineer, Eric Eby, and a couple engineers from DPW. We have Coast, Ben, Rockingham, a representative from the Rockingham County Planning Commission. So it's a project that will take a long time. We'll see it, in 5 or 6 years, but it's exciting.
Joanna, can you clarify which credit union's being vacated? The one
No,
closer to Lewis or the one?
no. So
Not vacating.
So that their headquarters has 26
There's, so the big glass headquarters,
how deep
Service Credit
understand,
Union.
right.
Yep.
They're
Lang
on a pretty
Road.
big parcel, and when
Right.
you go behind their parking lot, there's a road, and then a parcel behind
Right.
that.
That's fenced
26
off.
acres.
Right.
And that 26-acre parcel was
Yes.
part of the rezoning to Gateway.
Correct.
In the meanwhile, for the past year, Service Credit Union has been sort of exploring the concept of what would it look like to put affordable housing or below market rate housing in some form back there. They are a very military-centric credit union. So the plan that, nothing is drawn up yet. There's a public charrette June 20 and 21. The design teams all put together, lots of representatives from lots of different design, professional design parts. But they're looking to have some units, I'll call it a set aside, it's probably not the right word, but I'll call it earmarked. Some units are going to be earmarked for veterans. Some will be earmarked for seniors. Some will be earmarked for people with disabilities. There's also going to be workforce housing. Some of that will be earmarked for Service Credit Union employees, but also other employees. And they're very engaged in trying to get a conversation going with service industry workers because they feel like that's an important component of people that they would like to accommodate there. So it's a wide range of who they're going to plug in there. It's below market rate. They'll be talking to developers of below market rate housing. And it's an amazing project. Their numbers are big of what they'd like to
And
accommodate there.
it's what we're trying to promote. We're
They're
trying to.
hoping between 250 and 300 units. But it's not in, it hasn't been
Right.
laid out there. Not sure how the parking, they're not sure yet. Ask after their charrette in
Still,
June.
it's a good size.
It's a big project.
You know what, I realized, I got that confused, there was the credit union that's on Borthwick. That one's-
Northeast there.
Credit Union.
Yeah.
That's
Northeast.
being vacated.
That's
Right.
vacated.
That's for sale now.
Right.
Yeah.
okay.
For sale, and I
They
know a
want to
number
do
of nonprofits have already done test fits there that we've done for them.
Yeah.
We need more
So
credit.
people are looking at that. That building's a pretty
I love my
great
credit union.
location.
It's a
Northeast,
thing.
yeah, Northeast Credit Union is the Borthwick Ave.
Yeah.
So I hope something great goes in there.
I think something will go in there.
It's just such a good location.
Yeah, but this is, and we were touched on the housing committee, and we would love to do some type of. We are working on the next few meetings are identifying our workflow. We just approved a goal statement for the Blue Ribbon Committee, which is to help. I'm trying to remember it exactly. Create recommendations for the Land Use and Council for policy changes that help promote at least 500 new units permitted for below market rate housing in the next 2 years. And that number is based on the housing study that said that Portsmouth would need 1,500 new units by the end of the decade to keep up with the need-based. And so that was a goal statement that we took a couple weeks to get to really kind of iron out, and that is through the public and private sector. And we said permitted because we know that things take a lot longer to build. But we are working on, and once we figure out that flow, I'm happy to give it to the EDC. Our goal is to have a working plan, and within that, bring in people to have discussions. One of the things we're looking at, much like the land use did, is zoning, but looking at something like Atlantic Heights and comparing it to our current zoning and saying, how could we get back to being able to build a high-density area like that in some of these in Portsmouth? And we know that there's very limited buildable land, but we know that the land that we have is being redeveloped. So we're working through that stuff, and we will. I can come back and give this commission updates as much as they'd like for that group. And that group is meeting twice a month right now for about 2 hours on Thursday evenings in this room. So it is.
I think and I know we've had conversations about this, I think the thing about our, even zoning, Market Square, the Portsmouth we have today is sort of what people come to, or they've grown up with, or they live with, and we have to look at what motivated the policies that created the environment we have today. A lot of the restrictions against multifamily housing, or high-density housing, were founded in the 1920s, urban renewal, and really against, workforce or creating those spaces. So what we have now hasn't always been, so I hope that we can use this as an opportunity to take a look at upzoning or encouraging density or encouraging multifamily housing as a response to where we're at now based on previous policy.
Yeah, we were talking about, we used Atlantic Heights in our meeting last night, but we also used like Richards Ave and Lincoln, like where you see the triplexes, like that you could not really, based on our zoning, you'd be really restricted of where you could build those. But again, they're higher density that are already in our communities. And so one of the things is one of our committee members asked for a report back of what we were and where we are. And the recommendation came out of actually, why don't we pick areas of town that we really enjoy and that we feel like are good centers and figure out if we could create those again today. So that's kind of will be within our working group.
Okay, other questions? Anything you want to add to that, Vince?
I don't think I could add anything.
Okay.
Pina coladas.
That was pretty thorough. All right. We'll open it up for public comment. Would you like to say anything, Steve?
Oh, well, okay, yeah. I'm a writer for indepthnh.org.
Why don't you see if you get a little closer to the mic?
Yeah.
Oh,
Got to be on the record, Steve.
right. Thanks. I don't have a long speech. I just wanted to let you know what I'm doing, and I'll be in touch. Tom and I already spent a couple hours the other day, and Sean and I have met, And you may get a call from me to do this for, like I said, indepthnewhampshire.org. It's indepthnh.org officially. And I look forward to meeting more of you along the way.
Awesome.
Any questions? Oh, all right. Okay.
Okay. All right, as the agenda indicates, we've got meetings on June 7th, July 3rd, and August 2nd.
Thanks for the seat.
I will not be here in August, my friends. I will be in Vienna. So if anyone
Vienna?
has recommendations, let me know.
You're going to zoom in?
Absolutely.
It'll only be like 4 in the afternoon, so.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll be on a plane, actually.
On a
heading
Friday.
home.
All right.
The ring trip.
I will entertain a motion to adjourn and note that it is before 9 o'clock, so.
So moved?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? The ayes have it.